Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. This is the post-game podcast. The Minnesota Timberwolves fell to the Brooklyn Nets on Friday night by just 5 points in a fantastic game. We're going to break it down. The Timberwolves were without Karl-Anthony Towns and, of course, also without Patrick Beverley and Jaden McDaniels, but they played well and just simply didn't make enough shots in this game. The defense was okay. D'Angelo Russell had his moments, and the guys filling in for Karl-Anthony Towns played really well. We're going to break it all down, including key takeaways from the game and individual studs and duds. It's all upcoming on the show. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. I'm also the editor of Dunking with Wolves, the Timberwolves site on the Fansided Network. Happy Saturday, I guess. Happy weekend, everybody. This is the post-game podcast. The Timberwolves lost the Nets on Friday, but it was a fun game. The Timberwolves played well. Sans Karl-Anthony Towns. We're going to talk all about it on the show today. This episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to you by Truebill. Truebill is the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions you don't want or need, and even negotiate better deals on those you want to keep. First of all, thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. Remember, Locked On Wolves is free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your audio platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, the all-new Odyssey app. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. All right, as mentioned off the top here, this is the post-game pod from Wolves Nets. The Wolves lost 110-105 to Brooklyn on Friday night at Barclays Center in Brooklyn. And this was a fun game. The Timberwolves did not have Karl-Anthony Towns. He was out due to the tailbone contusion suffered Wednesday night. Of course, X-rays were negative, after the game Wednesday. And he was questionable game time decision. They ended up ruling him out on Friday. Of course, the Wolves don't play Saturday or Sunday, so he'll get a full 4 days of rest. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off before the Wolves return to play at home on Monday night. So it made sense to hold him out of the game. So Wolves went into this one without Karl-Anthony Towns, still no Patrick Beverley, still no Jaden McDaniels. McDaniels out due to illness. He hasn't played since last Saturday night against Philly. And Patrick Beverley, of course, is out for at least another week with the adductor strain. So the Wolves were shorthanded going into this one, and it was interesting to see Reid as part of the starting lineup. We'll get into that here in a minute. He played well overall. So this was a close game early. The Timberwolves actually built a 7-point lead at the end of the first quarter. And then the second quarter was kind of all Nets. Brooklyn did a really good job defensively. D'Angelo Russell was, I believe, 2 of 11 at the break at halftime in terms of shooting the ball. He did not have a very good first half. Anthony Edwards was very quiet. He only had 1 field goal attempt in the first quarter, and the Wolves were just kind of not really firing on all cylinders, I guess would be the best way to say it offensively. And eventually at halftime, the Wolves were down by 3 at halftime. But it was a run really kind of bridging the end of the first and the start of the second quarter, 14-0 run that allowed Brooklyn to build a little bit of a lead. Minnesota ate into it a little bit in the middle of the second quarter, ended up only being down by 3 at halftime. But the second quarter was all Brooklyn. They took advantage of the Timberwolves really struggling offensively more than anything else. The defense wasn't all that bad. It was pretty active for Minnesota. They drew several charges. I think they actually drew like 5 charges in this game overall. And Minnesota was fine on the defensive end. It was more the offense that struggled second quarter. So the Wolves were down by 3 at halftime, or actually, I'm sorry, they were down by 4 at halftime. And then third quarter, D'Angelo Russell started to click a little bit after having a really rough first half. Anthony Edwards woke up, and Reid continued to play well. And this thing was close in the fourth quarter, really up until the final minute. This was a back and forth game. And again, no Karl-Anthony Towns. Obviously, both James Harden and Kevin Durant playing for the Brooklyn Nets. They were, sans obviously Joe Harris and obviously Kyrie Irving, but a relatively healthy Nets team. And Minnesota played well. It's one of those things where the Wolves came into this game 11-11. They won 7 of their last 9 games. They're at the point where I don't think it's it's worth it to talk about moral victories. But without Karl-Anthony Towns and also added no Patrick Beverley and no Jaden McDaniels, this was something of a moral victory. I mean, Minnesota competed down the stretch. It was really just missed shots. I mean, they had opportunities. Malik Beasley, we'll talk more about this here in a minute and key takeaways and also individual studs and duds, but Malik missed some open shots. D'Angelo Russell missed a couple of shots in the final really 10 seconds. It was a 5-point game, so probably wouldn't have mattered unless the Nets had missed both free throws after the Wolves fouled, would have fouled. But D'Angelo Russell missed a wide open 10-footer with about 10 seconds left that would have cut it to a one possession game. And then the game was over at that point. Just some missed open shots. And that happens. I mean, the Wolves shot just 38.7% on the night, 31% from three. And it's hard to get too upset about the effort in this game as shorthanded as the Timberwolves were. So definitely frustrating, definitely a disappointing loss. But the Wolves, I mean, for what it's worth, they covered the spread. They were 7.5-point underdogs, according to our friends at betonline.ag. They only lost by 5. And again, this should have been a one possession game. The Wolves were in this thing throughout. So a good overall performance. I want to talk about key takeaways next. And there were several from this one because, again, some guys stepped up and played well. I mean, players that hadn't, I mean, Nathan Knight was not a regular rotation member. This was a season high in minutes for Leandro Balmaro. There's plenty to talk about in terms of key takeaways from this one. And then we'll hit individual studs and duds as we always do post game. So that's coming up next. First, though, let's talk about our title sponsors from today's show. And that, of course, is our friends at Truebill. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam out to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. Because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel, Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. Truebill has over 2 million users and has helped them save over $100 million. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now, truebill.com/lockedonnba. Could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/lockedonnba. All right, let's talk key takeaways from this one. Number one, the Timberwolves actually did a pretty good job on Kevin Durant. I realize he scored 30. He shot 50% from the field. But he did have 5 turnovers. He committed 4 fouls, a couple of which were offensive. And I thought Jared Vanderbilt did a really good job when he was on Durant. I mean, you could tell that the lateral quickness isn't quite there. I've talked about this now for a while. Jaden McDaniels is just a better perimeter defender than Vanderbilt. Obviously, Vanderbilt's the better rebounder. He's a little bit, bigger and stronger. But McDaniels is better laterally, and it would have been really nice to have him in this game. Jared Vanderbilt did an admirable job guarding Kevin Durant on the perimeter. And yes, KD had 30, 10, and 6, but he also committed 5 turnovers. And he had to earn 12 of his 30 points at the free throw line in this game. Vando played well. And when Josh Kogi was guarding him, I mean, Kogi was okay, but Josh didn't have the best of games and just didn't quite seem as up to the task of guarding Kevin Durant as the length of Jared Vanderbilt. So Vando on Durant was a positive in this game. I thought Vanderbilt inspired confidence in me related to his ability to guard in the perimeter. I thought that he was maybe going to struggle with this a little bit more than he did, and I thought he did a pretty good job overall. Number 2 key takeaway, bad game from Anthony Edwards. We'll get into this also in studs and duds, but Ant just really struggled. He was very quiet early, 1 field goal attempt in the first quarter. He had a monster dunk in the second quarter, which was a ton of fun. He took off from outside the paint, I think maybe 1 foot on the edge of the paint. Just a huge dunk in transition. He followed that up with a nice 3 in transition the next time down the floor. Really good stretch there from Ant in the second quarter, but he struggled overall. 8 turnovers in this game, 4 assists, 7 of 16 shooting. So under 50%, 1 of 7 outside the arc. Just not a good Ant game. And he had 2 of his 8 turnovers, maybe 3 were just lost ball turnovers. Like he just dribbled the ball off his leg, passed it to nobody. Just a really weird, like his handle was very loose in this game. And that accounted for at least 2, if not 3 of his 8 turnovers. It really needs to figure that out. And it's not like it's been a consistent issue. So, I mean, that's maybe a little bit dramatic, but in this game, that was a big problem. Just lackadaisical, a game you lose by 2 possessions, a 5-point game. those careless turnovers, especially in the first half. Both teams were very sloppy with the ball in the first half of this game. But those careless lost ball turnovers, dribble the ball off your leg, pass the ball to nobody, those add up. And Ant really struggled and did not make up for it in other areas in this game. He was far too content to settle for step back threes. When Biggs got switched on to him, LaMarcus Aldridge multiple times got switched on to Ant, and Ant just said, all right, I'll just shoot a step back three, which is great if he's hot and he's shooting well, but he's a 34% 3-point shooter. There's a higher rate of success if he consistently takes a big to the rim, tries to draw a foul, tries to score in the paint versus taking a step back three. He's not a 40% 3-point shooter, right? I mean, it makes more sense for him to get downhill, to get to the rim, to try and draw the foul, to distribute, to initiate for teammates than it does for him to take step back threes as much as he did in this game. So disappointing game from Ant. Third takeaway: Nathan Knight and Naz Reid both had fantastic games in filling in for Karl-Anthony Towns. Naz had 19 and 7, 7 of 14 shooting, 3 of 6 outside the arc, hit a couple of big threes early in the game, but was really good on both ends of the floor. Held his own when switched on to Kevin Durant, James Harden, and competed. Nathan Knight, first game of the year, he's played non-garbage minutes and had 3 points, 5 rebounds in 14 minutes. Had a couple of tough fouls called against him, but he was active on the glass. It looked a lot like what we saw from him in Las Vegas Summer League back in July or August or whatever Summer League was this year. And also the first couple games in Iowa when he played for the Iowa Wolves of the G League. If you watch those games, very active, active, physical, all the qualities you're looking for in a backup big, a guy who can be your fourth big. And Knight played really well. I was impressed by Nathan Knight in this game. He only played 14 minutes, which was the least of the 9 guys that saw the floor for the Timberwolves in this game. But a solid game from Nathan Knight, filling in for or really filling Naz's role as Naz filled Cat's role. Fourth takeaway is Malik Beasley only shot 6 of 19. He was 4 of 14 outside the arc. So that means he was 2 of 5 inside the arc, and was more than willing to squeeze the trigger as soon as he touched the ball, especially in the second half of this game. But it was hard to fault him. Nobody else was scoring efficiently for the Timberwolves. The Wolves needed offense from somewhere, and Malik tried to give it to them. There was a brief moment in the first half where it felt like, oh, this could be a Malik Beasley, 30-point game on, like some crazy, like, I don't know, 8 of 12 shooting or something like that. Didn't quite happen. There was a stretch where he really got hot, but then second half, he was much more pedestrian. He ended up just 4 of 14 outside the arc, but the Wolves needed him to try and step up, and he gave it a go. I thought that this was a decent Malik Beasley game, despite the shooting percentage not being great. He was active, and he did what he could, in this one. So Malik Beasley, stepped up, tried to impact the game in a positive way, and generally was just okay. But that was the Wolves just kind of adjusting their offense with no Karl-Anthony Towns, with Ant having a bit of an off night. Get Malik involved wherever possible. And I thought that was the right thing to do for the Wolves. And unfortunately, he just didn't see enough shots go through the net, which I guess has kind of been the theme of the season so far from Malik Beasley. Obviously, it's still relatively early. So here's hoping he can get a little bit more so on track moving forward. All right, individual studs and duds are next. First, though, let's talk about our friends at Built Bar. This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, even better than a candy bar for that matter. Built Bar, filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, yet high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. So many flavors you'll have a hard time choosing. We have raspberry mint brownie, cherry or double chocolate, cookies and cream, or peanut butter brownie. Built Bar gives you that extra fuel you need to bust down those mall doors and battle all those holiday shoppers. Or if you're just standing in endless shopping lines, Built Bar can give you that extra something to keep you going. So throw it in your jacket or purse. You never know when you're going to need it, because it's the season of peace and love. Don't bring up your favorite Built Bar flavor at family parties. People are so passionate about their favorite flavor, they'll fight for it, and things could get out of hand. For me, it's anything with coconut, anything with brownie chunks, which are just phenomenal. Today I had a blueberry muffin, amazing. Those would probably be the top 3 at this moment that I'd fight for. But I mean, really, honestly, I could get on board with any flavor. And but those 3, fight to the death for those 3 Built Bar flavors. Are you friends with Santa? Well, tell Santa to throw a few Built Bars in those stockings. With so many flavors, they'd make anyone's Christmas morning a happy one. Want to cozy up with something warm? Here's a holiday secret. Dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cup of cocoa. Let it melt a little, give your beverage a little bit of that Built Bar flavor. Plus, you have a nice melty Built Bar to go with it. Be sure to have a couple napkins on hand. Like some of those marshmallowy treats around the holidays, you need to get your hands on Built Bar Puffs. They're light, fluffy, and marshmallowy through and through, different flavors, all covered in chocolate. Tastes so good, you won't believe that they're filled with protein. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off your order at built.com. All right, individual studs and duds for this one. Number one stud for me, Reid. Really good stepping in for Karl-Anthony Towns. He played 34 minutes as a starter in this game, 19.7 rebounds, 1 assist, 0 turnovers. We saw Nas play quite a bit the last year and a half for Karl-Anthony Towns when Towns was out. The wrist injury, well, actually 2 years ago, the knee injury, then the wrist. Then last year it was COVID, and then the wrist, and then COVID again. And Nas wasn't consistent as a starter. This was a good Nas game. 19 and 7 in 34 minutes, 50% shooting from the floor, 50% from outside the arc. Really good game from Nas Reid. Active. He scored off the dribble. He scored as a spot up shooter. He scored in the paint. He scored on offensive rebounds, on putbacks. A really solid game from Nas Reid. He is stud number one for me in this game. No question about it. Number two is D'Angelo Russell. The shooting percentage was not good in this game. He was roughly 30%, 6 of 22 shooting. But he had 21 and 11 in a game that the Wolves really struggled to get going offensively. 11 assists to the 4 turnovers, passed the ball well overall, got to the free throw line 6 times, made all 6 of his free throws, and hit a couple of threes as the Wolves were kind of trying to hang in the game in the middle stages, second, third quarter. Overall played well against one of his former teams. Not the best D'Angelo Russell game, but in terms of how the Wolves were playing offensively, D'Lo did what he could, and I thought overall played pretty well. Third stud for me in this game is Jared Vanderbilt. 10 points, 15 rebounds, a nice double-double, 5 of 8 shooting, was really good around the cup, 6 offensive rebounds of his 15 overall rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, just 1 turnover, and 4 fouls committed in 30 minutes. He was a +3 in a game that the Wolves lost by 5. So he was one of only 3 Timberwolves with a positive plus minus. As always, the caveat here, plus minus is very noisy. Individual player, single game plus minus is very noisy. But Vando was a +3 off the bench. Nathan Knight was a +5. And then also Leandro Balmaro, I should mention, he was a +19 somehow in 25 minutes. There's a reason the Wolves, Chris Finch tried to go with him early in the fourth at the 2 guard. He's mostly been playing backup point guard since Patrick Beverley got hurt. But Finch decided to go with him next to D'Angelo Russell before giving Russell a rest, leaving Balmaro on the floor as the lead guard. And then when Balmaro came out of the game, things kind of fell apart. And I'd have to watch this back to see how much of an impact Balmaro actually had directly on that. But he did a good job defensively on both James Harden and Kevin Durant when given the opportunity. Overall, 4 points, 5 assists, 4 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 0 turnovers in 25 minutes for Balmaro, +19 in just 25 minutes, which is a really hard thing to do in a game that you lose by 5 to be a +19. So there's something there. Balmaro was, again, solid defensively on both Harden and Durant. Of course, doesn't offer much on offense. Had one nice dunk, got fouled, driving to the basket, and that's how he got his 4 points. But a solid overall performance from Balmaro. He's not a stud or a dud, but I wanted to shout him out there. So the 3 studs are Vando, Nas Reid, D'Angelo Russell. Duds in this game, Anthony Edwards had a really rough game. Talked about this last segment, but 19 points on 16 shots, 7 of 16 shooting, just 1 of 7 outside the arc, 8 turnovers in this game, just 4 assists. He did have 3 steals, but only 2 rebounds in 37 minutes. Anthony Edwards needs to get more than 2 rebounds in 37 minutes as a 6'5" or 6'6" or whatever he is now, ultra athletic, bouncy guard forward. He's got to do better than 2 rebounds in 37 minutes, and he can't turn it over 8 times, especially when 3 of them were really kind of uncontested, unforced errors that he made. So disappointing game from Ant. A second dud for me is Josh Kogi. He was just okay defensively. 18 minutes, 0 of 2 shooting, only 3 rebounds, no other stats, no assists, no steals, no blocks, and committed 3 fouls at 18 minutes. Did not do as good of a job on Kevin Durant or James Harden as his teammates did, as Jared Vanderbilt. At times, Taurean Prince was pretty good in this game as well, 11 points in 20 minutes. And even Malik Beasley competed defensively more so than we saw from Josh Okogie in this one. So a bit of a disappointing game from both Okogie and Ant. The Wolves have both Saturday and Sunday off before returning home to start a 3-game homestand. On Monday night, they'll take on the Atlanta Hawks, who have been a bit disappointing themselves this year after making the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They've been roughly a 500 team this season. But Minnesota will get Atlanta on Monday. They stay home for 3 games next week. It's your typical Monday, Wednesday, Friday week. So Atlanta on Monday, Utah at home on Wednesday, and then the Cleveland Cavs, surprising Cleveland Cavaliers, who started the season really hot, had a rough patch. They lost 5, 6 in a row, and now have played better of late. They get Cleveland next Friday night at Target Center. So 3 games next week. Of course, we'll be back on Monday morning with the first of our Monday through Friday shows. Regular Rhythm will be back next week. So be sure, if you're not already following or subscribed to the show, please do. And if you are, thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. Remember, the show is free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube, as well as all your audio platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, and of course, the all-new Odyssey app. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. All right, that's all we have for you today. Thanks again for listening to the show. Locked On Wolves is, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. The Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.